We'll take one from Kai Kuferschmidt. Kai, are you there?
Yes, thank you very much for taking my question. I wanted to ask about the strategy that we're seeing in some countries. I mean, the UK has talked about it, the Netherlands are suggesting it. And they're basically trying to find a balance between shutting everything down to suppress the virus and letting it spread at a very low level in order to have some semblance of normality. I'm curious whether the WHO, I mean, you know, you've talked very little about the end game because you're concentrating on what's happening now. But I'd really love you to address a little bit how you see the future, you know, for all of these countries that are in a shutdown now. How do you, you know, see this proceeding?
Thanks, Guy. You are correct that this is a very, very important issue, because as so many countries around the world have gone into this mode of people staying at home, of movement restriction, countries are obviously and justifiably concerned of the social, psychological and economic impacts of those moves. Countries are doing their best to suppress infection and take pressure out of the epidemic and, more importantly, off the health system. But we do know that that is very difficult to sustain. And therefore, how are we going to turn that around? And the DG said it. How do we move from what is a defensive mode into an offensive mode? How do we move from trying to avoid the virus to actually going after the virus? We've seen this in Ebola, we've seen this in polio. There is a moment at which you have to step forward and go after the virus. In order to do that, and we've seen examples in places like Singapore and Korea where governments haven't had to shut everything down. They've been able to make tactical decisions regarding schools, tactical decisions regarding movements, and been able to move forward without some of the draconian measures. But they've only been able to do that because they have had another weapon. And the other weapon they've had is highly aggressive case finding, contact tracing, community surveillance, isolation of cases, quarantining of contacts, testing of contacts if they get sick. They've put together a comprehensive public health toolkit, which they're able to match with their more society-wide measures, like movement restrictions. And we're working extremely hard. Our Strategic and Technical Advisory Group for Infectious Hazards is working with us right now, looking at those strategies to move forward from where we are now. And governments need to use this, to use the DG's word, second window of opportunity. All that we get from movement restrictions and people staying at home and all of these measures, we buy some time. We take the heat out of the epidemic or the pandemic. We buy some time, but we then need to find strategies and tactics that get us to move forward. And we have to make those decisions. Each government will have to make those decisions. We're working hard to provide advice to governments on how to do that. But very, very clearly, in order to move forward, a scale up, and I mean a massive scale up in public health capacities to do case finding, isolation, quarantine of contacts, and being able to go after the virus rather than the virus coming after us is one of the key ways we can move forward. And we'll be coming back to governments and in public around our advice on this to governments. There is a very, very precious window now in which we can prepare to do that.